guys, welcome to KFM-BFM Origins. Thanks so much for doing this. I know you're in the middle of 4 nights in a row at the Casbah. It's, I guess, what are you calling it? A celebration of 4 decades together?
That actually officially starts next year, but we're kind of jumping on it a little early because next year would be the 40th year. But we had about 20-some shows, so we decided to start celebrating early. So.
Going for it now.
Yeah.
You bet.
And all nights are sold out. I think there's a few tickets left maybe for Sunday night.
That's what I've heard.
And it's interesting, different artist or band playing or opening each night.
Yeah, we did that in Seattle too. We had all kinds of bands. We had Viz Queen, and we had Skating Polly, Small Wigs, Blasters in San Francisco, and last night, and Chris from the Foo Fighters, and
some are friends, and some are just people that we've worked with and admire and stuff. That's the one thing you can do, you know. It's like you can get people in on the guest list that you actually can affect in the world, and you can also have people that you like and are worth it to open for you.
So I have to ask, since you brought up Seattle, I saw a gig a couple of years ago in Seattle. I was living up there for a while at Marymore Park in Redmond, and I believe a guy you talk about, you know, who's a fan, Eddie Vedder, joined you on stage at that show, just out of the blue. I think maybe he did The New World with you.
yeah. He
So did anything happen like that this
was
time?
when we were doing just an X show, or was it with Blondie?
I think it was the Blondie X tour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he lives up there
Yeah.
part of the time.
Some of the time.
Yeah.
Lives down here some of the time too. He's got family in town. We claim him as a San Diegan. He actually went to high school
I think
here.
he identifies as that as well.
Yeah. So anything like that happened this time around? Where did you play when you were in Seattle? It was Numos, right? On this last show?
No, we played at the
Crocodile. Okay.
which is kind of redone
Yep.
like Numos.
Right on.
No super famous people.
No surprises this time?
No,
Yeah.
no super famous people. They're just all in the audience.
Right. No, that's...
Actually, it's funny because Jeff Ament was at the show on Thursday when Mike Watt played. Pretty fun.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. So let's talk a little bit about the music. We're talking 4 decades starting next year, 40 years. I think it's important to note that, you know, it's been a while that this band, I mean, did you ever imagine you'd be doing this for 40 years, for 4
Sure.
decades?
Sure.
Of course we did.
Well, you know the answer.
Yeah.
But I believe that whenever you start something, you know, whether something big or something small, you can imagine it becoming something great or just crashing and burning, and you kind of, you know, like you get married or you start a new job or whatever it is, you imagine it just being the most fulfilling thing ever. And, you know, if it's like a job, you imagine making a lot of money or whatever, but the more you do it, I think the more gratitude you have for it, and the more appreciation you have for each other, and the fact that you don't sweat the small stuff, and you forgive people for their personality quirks and things like that. And it's like, oh yeah, that's Billy, that's what he does, and that's cool, and he, you know, hopefully does the same for us or me, and yeah. Can't speak for us. But nobody thought punk rock or the LA scene would last more than like 2 years. I don't think anybody really believed, because it wasn't designed for that, and nobody thought that we would be influencing people the way that other people influenced us, but that was just being maybe short-sighted.
So let's, you bring up the scene. First of all, congratulations on the Grammy nomination.
Pretty weird. For the audiobook, yeah.
So we had a chance to chat for a few minutes beforehand. I'd love it if you could sort of go back and talk a little bit about how this came about. Obviously, the Grammy nomination is for audiobook.
Right.
But there is a book.
Right.
You know, there's going to be a book before the audiobook. So talk about the book and where it comes from, what it's about.
Well, briefly, It's telling the story of LA punk rock from '77 to '82, and in '82 it had sort of broken apart into hardcore and more roots oriented and different things like that. But I didn't want to be the authority because that's a lot of work and a lot of discipline that I didn't really have or didn't want to have. And also, even though I may appreciate the fact that women were a big part of the scene, like equal partners, I can't speak from that position. So I realized that I could. Tom DeSavia, who's a good friend, he kept encouraging me to write this book, and I thought, well, the best way to do it is to have everyone tell their story and their truth, but give them topics. And so Exene could speak from a woman's point of view, and also like the cultural revolution that we thought we were part of. And I could talk about appreciating the East LA contingent coming into the punk rock scene in LA, but I'm not from there. So we got Teresa Covarrubias from The Brat, and she told her story, what that was like. And you know, Mike Watt tells the story of him and D. Boone being these dumb kids from Pedro, and you know, seeing and appreciating and being inspired by the original punk rock bands, but then when they made the Minutemen, they got swept into the hardcore scene, and that was kind of a uncomfortable position for them to be in. So, yeah, I mean, there's like 14 different authors, and I'm kind of like the narrator, and we get a lot of perspectives, and it's all, you know, dedicated chapters, so everyone had to look at what they wrote and decide, is that the story I want to tell, and am I going to get sued, and because so we had to change some names. Jane Weedland was the chapter who was the sauciest, and we had to change the most names in Jane's chapter.
And for the audio book, you have each one of the authors for each chapter doing
Each
their
author
part?
is reading their own chapter. So in 20 years, it's going to be a pretty cool document. I mean, yeah, everyone telling their story.
So, Exene, you were talking briefly earlier about that scene and the importance of it. It was beyond music, right? I mean, there's more going on there than just a bunch of varied bands. I mean, sort of an ethos, I guess.
Well, it was the last thing like that this planet will ever see, probably, or at least in this country, because it was before video, it was before cell phones, computers. Nobody had cameras. If you did, they were with, you know, film. That was expensive, and there wasn't a lot of mainstream media, but there was a lot of college radio and stuff. So that was just more of the same kind of extension of what it was. So it was a kind of a magical, you know, telepathic kind of thing, because everybody knew what was going on everywhere just by knowing it was happening. And people would just show up at shows that had, you know, how did they even know that an unmarked building had this going on inside? And if you could find it, you were welcome, because that meant you were really something else, if you could even knew it was happening. So that was kind of a unique thing about it, and I think that's what made it so great, is that you had to experience it. You couldn't watch it on the phone. And that also kept it a vacuum, and it kept it from being polluted by corporations and people deciding, oh, that's what everyone should be wearing. Oh, that's what everyone should sound like. Oh, wow, that's what I want to be like. And so it was just like nobody knew who was going to be there, what they were going to be wearing, how they were going to be thinking, what the music was going to sound like. So it was a very creative time. And of course, the economy was better then. You know, people had a little bit of money. People could get an old car, buy an old guitar, get on the bus, go everywhere. You know, LA was like wide open. You know, there wasn't like all that traffic, and like the billions of people that have come there since. It's just like impossible to do anything there now, really. But yeah, it was like a playground. It was just like a kid's playground at school, where anything you wanted to make up for a game could be played, and then, you know, then you'd all go off to your little. It was good.
With drugs and alcohol and rock and roll music.
Did I find it interesting. You look back in the history of how this thing started. Did you ever, prior to being an Exene, want to be in a band?
No, I didn't come to California to be in a band. I was living in Florida. I was living in Tallahassee. My sister's ex-boyfriend wanted to get someone. He had a job in San Francisco area. He needed someone to help pay for gas. I was there was nothing in Tallahassee in 1976. I couldn't get a job. It was just a nightmare. So I sold my 1950 Cadillac for $300. And I went to California, and I got to California, I had like $200 maybe, and I lived with a friend, and then I got this job at this poetry place, and I met John. So then he'd already met Billy, but yeah, I didn't ever want to be in a band. I'd never sung or anything before. I just thought, go out there, see what's going on, live in a city for, a real city for a change, see what it's like.
It was fate, I believe.
It must be. I think it's remarkable how unique X sounded as a band when I first heard them. I had heard of X through reading music publications and picked up Wild Gift, and my expectation, because it was described as punk rock, was, okay, well, I know what the Ramones sound like, I know what the Sex Pistols sound like, I know what the Clash sound like. And when I heard X for the first time, it shattered those expectations, and the thing that hit first was, okay, this sounds rootsier than your typical punk rock, but the vocal interplay between the two of you, very unique voices, unique harmonies, and I find it remarkable that you stumbled upon that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's I don't know, good fortune, and no previous planning. See, that was the other thing that's unique about I think a lot of punk rock bands and any really good band is there's nothing contrived about it. There's nothing that's calculated. It just kind of happens. It's like all the people that are in the Doors or Nirvana or Led Zeppelin or just whatever. Even they're just four personalities, and you just come up with something.
Oops.
I mean,
sorry. Yeah, you don't have, well, that's the thing when I was saying like a playground, because you don't really think past the moment you're creating stuff and having fun doing it, that there's any reason besides that moment for it to exist. It doesn't have to exist past that moment, and that's just fine.
Yeah.
But I think nowadays it's probably harder to find that because, for one thing, like I was saying before, the influences are just so much. And if you do come up with a good idea, you probably will see it later that day on television in a commercial for a product. Hey, I just came up with that this morning, and they've already stolen it.
It's like all of culture has become like the fashion industry, where
Yeah.
everyone's stealing everything from everybody, and it's like,
Yeah, but
oh
anyway.
no, I invented that. But I give Exene a lot of credit for our vocal stylings, because she didn't know the I'm speaking of it in the third person. You didn't know the like traditional way of singing, other than just having heard it on the radio. So Exene,
Excuse me, I'm sick.
you just sang what you heard, rather than what somebody said you should do. And I also give Billy a lot of credit for bringing rockabilly into punk rock, because I think, he was the main proponent of that. The Cramps, yeah, but it was a much more garage, twisted kind of version of it. And Robert Quine, yeah, a little bit in what's his name? Richard Hell's band.
Yeah.
He had some of those kind of rock and roll licks, but yeah. So that's, we went backward, where we knew a lot of stuff, a lot of musical things, like theory of how to write songs. Because I hadn't really studied, obviously, but I had, listened to it and learned how songs were put together and stuff. But I had to unlearn a bunch of stuff. And Billy knew a lot of stuff, but he unlearned some of that because he didn't want to play a 2-minute fucking lead. And can I say that? Can I do the F-bombs out here? Excuse me.
Fine.
No, it's okay.
It's a
now.
living room conversation.
Yes.
We're good.
Anyway, he didn't want to play a 2-minute or 5-minute lead, and DJ wanted to be everybody in our band, and I think it goes for all the others as well, wanted to be much more primal and just intuitive rather than logical or mental.
And also, DJ was an accomplished musician, and he plays vibes still, and he was, he reads music, and he's really knows a lot about jazz and big bands. He's like a real musician, and up in here and stuff. Billy used to play with Billy played with Etta James, and he played with all like the kind of R&B bands. He played saxophone and guitar in the '60s with a lot of people, Gene Vincent and some other people, and John, of course, is a great musician, singer, and songwriter. So that is different than a lot of bands, right there. So.
However, I would say that the Clash and us have some things in common because they were really eclectic too. They don't have a punk rock sound because all the records are kind of different and they're all kind of slow and fast and reggae and just weird other elements popping in and out, and their production was also really kind of thin and upside down. It didn't have that junk, none of that heavy kind of sound. So
It's amazing how you go back and you listen to your records and you listen to those Clash records, and they're timeless sounding. They do not sound of a distinct period. There are records, for instance, I like to call it the '80s sound, that you go back to and you listen, boy, this sounds dated now. But there's a freshness, there's a crispness, there's your word primal sound to a lot of those things, and they stand up.
yeah, that was intentional. Yeah, it was. I mean, not to think that we were gonna, some records you can tell exactly when they were recorded because of the technique or the sound or the particular like guitar pedal they used or treatment on a vocal or something like that, and they can be great for that. Like Prince is a some of those records take you right back to that specific time, and other ones like Jimi Hendrix would be like that. But then the Doors are more timeless, and so we wanted to have something that was less tricky.
They didn't have a lot of those little tricks yet then.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't have that loud snare thing, and they didn't have the vocal fix, and they didn't have,
Pro Tools.
well, yeah, but beyond that, I mean, there wasn't like the effect pedal everybody was suddenly using or the weird thing, it just was like, yeah, there's a machine and you play music and it goes on the machine and.
Right. But I mean, lyrically as well, Exene was smart enough in writing The New World not to say Ronald Reagan, but so it's like what's his name?
Yeah,
Because
it's what's his name, the guy that's there now.
it's anybody and everybody, whereas the dead Kennedys might have said Reagan, and
Right.
then so that's like chink, there you are. So
Yeah. So let's, you bring up the Doors a couple of times. One of the questions, several questions came up about working with Ray Manzarek. How did that come about? I mean, he's a fan, somebody told him about you. How did that happen?
Well,
he
came to see us play with his wife Dorothy, and
at the Whiskey A Go-Go.
he thought it was good, and we hung out a little bit, and we were thinking about making a record, and he said, well, I'll produce it if you want to make a record. Sounds good, let's hang out. And then he said, you ever had sushi before? And I said, I don't know what that is. And I had just learned about bagels right before that. I was like, this city is insane. And then he took us to go get sushi, remember? But not right that night, but another night. Anyway, I always think of him about things like that because he was such a guru-y kind of guy, which he wouldn't probably like to be called that. But he was just a real nice presence on the planet and just a very positive energy source of, hey, I'm talented and I got lucky and I worked my ass off and I've got a great life and I'm going to do all this other stuff with other people and bring all this stuff out that I can help get to people. We did 4 records with him, and yeah, he's great.
Yeah, they're all great records. And so at the time when he came to see you, were you playing Soul Kitchen at the time?
Uh-huh.
We were, and his wife Dorothy said, Ray, they're playing your song. And we said, what? That's the way the story goes.
Why is water so difficult today?
Just is.
Yeah, she was playing, and she didn't recognize it.
He didn't recognize it, and she did, and because our version is like way faster and et cetera. So I wish I remember more clearly the actual first time we met, but I do remember him. He had also read an article in the L.A. Reader, which is kind of like the weekly, who was talking about the new music was happening in L.A. and it had some lyrics, and he was attracted to or identified with some of the lyrics, like being similar to Jim Morrison's, and then we had a rehearsal, and I was really sweating bullets because he and the Doors were one of my heroes, and Exene as well, So, and it wasn't a big deal. Some people thought that it was kind of lame that we were working with this, rock star, and to us it was a really good point of like validation in some way. It's like, well, they're good, and the Doors kind of got a little bit of a pass. They weren't as because they were so nihilistic or dark and
It was okay to not like the Beatles
Yeah.
or the Rolling Stones,
right.
but you can't.
Doors
not
kinda
like
got
the
a
Doors.
pass, 'cause
The
they were-
Doors are scary.
They were all about chaos
Scary,
and
yeah.
They were good.
screwing stuff up.
Yeah, it's once again, credibility. I can imagine. I'm sure other bands maybe in the scene or other people in the scene are like, oh, they're working with famous rock star, but it's hard to find
Actually, that
fault
was
with the Doors.
That was a huge risk. It was like, wait till people find out we're working with somebody who's been on the radio, and it's like, oh God. And then he played on our record, and I'm sure that pissed people off too. It's like, because everybody, people in small scenes are very proprietary. Is that, like, that's my band. You can't change my band. You can't change what you do. I want you to stay the same. And so it was pretty tricky when we did that. And here's the good thing, though, is when you don't really know what you're doing. So that happened. And then, we suffered some calamities and some good things, and we went on the road, and we got to the first, gig, and it was like, where's Ray? Is Ray going to be here tonight? Is Ray going to play tonight? And we were like, no, he just produced a record. Yeah, but he played on it. Is he coming? Is he going to be here? No. And then the next night, where's Ray? Is Ray here? Is Ray going to play is Ray going to play tonight?
As if.
As if he was going to come,
gonna come
Ride
out
in a
in
van with you.
Yeah.
in a van. It's like, yeah, sure.
Awesome.
Yeah. So anyway, of course, some people probably came to see us only because they were Doors fans and they thought maybe he would be there, but I think it sorted itself out over time.
Let's talk about the records. Los Angeles, your debut album, 1980, right?
Yeah.
And I think anybody in Southern California, it's like Los Angeles is sort of this anthem.
Yeah, you know what? One of these days, it was on Slash, and then it was on maybe Rhino or Warner's or whatever. Now it's been, we would love someday for someone to count how many we've sold and give us a gold record, because I think we probably have sold 500,000 by now.
I think so.
But if they did that, then they'd have to,
Right. Of course.
I think Slash sold it when it was just around 490, and then they started at 0 again.
Reset the counter.
I'm gonna get you a tin record, Exene.
Yeah.
So talk about the writing process. I mean, I am always curious when you see credits on a record as, a co-write. And for years I thought Lennon and McCartney co-wrote all those songs, and it turns out that sometimes they did, sometimes they didn't. Lennon wrote part of it, McCartney added this.
Yeah.
Your process, is
It's
it
kinda the
co-write
same.
or how do you do it?
Kind of the same. I mean, I wasn't writing music back then, like I am. I have been for 20 years. I've been writing music, but so John did the bass, and I did some words, and then we did melodies, and sometimes it was just a line of a song like Johnny Hit and Run Pauline, and then the whole song would happen after that.
Yeah.
Every song's different. There's a variety of ways of doing it, and some stand out like that one, but generally it was just, we were living together, so there's always, that's all we did was rehearse, write songs, practice, go to shows, put up flyers, do interviews, tour, or clean house and eat dinner. I mean, there was only those things. So.
Don't
Kind of
forget
constant. It was a constant thing. You
Yeah.
see the same thing in the car, and you go, "Oh wow, that'd be great."
Yeah, I mean that's I would have a number of different pieces of riffs or chord changes or music, and then I would either match some of Exene's words or mine to that music. So it's the strange thing is now I write a lot more intuitively, kind of both things at the same time. But then it was a little more analytical. Which seems odd. That now it's more organic, and then it was more kind of pieced together. But yeah, there were. I'm trying to think of. So Nausea was mostly Exene's lyrics. I had the piece of music, but then I think I added something towards the end, because a lot of times it would be just words and words and words, and it would be my job to take some out and put some in, or some. Your Phone's Off the Hook was mostly Exene's lyrics, but then I wrote the second verse. And then as far as melodies, I would have if it was a song that Exene was going to sing, I would have a sketch of a melody, a kind of a melody, and then through rehearsal and recording and stuff like that, then her melody, the way that she heard it, would develop. So it wasn't like, sing this is the way it goes, maybe parts of the chorus. Was it like, the world's a mess, it's in my kiss. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. That was the melody, but then Exene made it more her own. Does that answer the question?
Yeah,
Mhm.
no,
Yes, it
and
does.
it actually was leading to where I was going, because I was curious about, you go through the process of writing the songs, who sings what lines, that sort of thing. You know, who sings the lead here, who
Well,
sings the harmony, that part.
sometimes I would write things for John to sing, and he would write things for me to sing.
Yeah. Two of the best examples of that is I wrote a lot of the words that come back to me for Exene, like telling more of the story part. And it's obviously a really personal song, and she sings it, and she wrote most of the words to the Have-Nots, which is one that I sing. So
Actually, I remember, too, that come back to me. We were playing Pirates Cove in Cleveland, and it was a Wednesday night in Cleveland,
Yep.
and there was no dressing room or whatever, so we were upstairs. The club's not there anymore. I think the building is still there. It was a really old building, 100 years old, and there was wooden stairs up to the office, and there was a typewriter, and I got some paper, and I put it in there, and I wrote that playing in Cleveland on a Wednesday night, that verse on that typewriter, and
Yeah.
just feeling sad, and I was by myself. So yeah.
And so that's how the mind sharing thing comes into play. If you're living together and we're still do that on stage. Exene will start thinking of a different way of phrasing a line, and I'll pick up on it pretty quickly and just go along,
we do that
go with the
pretty
flow,
good.
and yeah.
We do that pretty good. Okay.
So I see you have this lovely guitar over here. And wonder if I could perhaps encourage you to pick that up and talk you into doing a song or two, or
Okay.
three.
I picked it up.
I mean, right?
What would you like to start with? Because I do.
And you guys decide what you want to play.
Okay.
I'll make a request later.
Okay.
Later.
Yeah,
How
you
much
know,
You're
later?
here all day.
How long
probably
are we
yeah.
doing this?
If I can keep you here as long as possible.
All right. Do we need any intro to this, or just you want to play it?
No, it's just yeah. Okay, so John and I do a lot of shows like together, and X sometimes has changed some of our songs around. They're quieter or weirder, some of them, and we have the vibes and the sex in their show now, like it's a show, but whatever. And the thing about it that's nice is you can hear the lyrics, because we're pretty good with our lyrics, and sometimes people didn't know what we were saying, so now you can hear the lyrics.
And there was a really beautiful video for this too.
I am a black and white ghost in a black and invisible dress. Oh, what a mess I'm in. What kind of fool am I? I am the married kind that said I do. Forever searching someone new. At night I get drunk and and fly around. In the day I dream and lay around. I drink and smoke your brand and drink. I am drunk over you. I am the married kind that I do. Forever searching someone new. You are the ghost of all my dreams. To you, it's just pretend. I pretend I'm alive, but just not dead. I would die for you. I am the married kind that I do. Forever searching someone new. My nights are numbered. They don't count for nothing. I ain't no fool, I'm just a bride. I'm just no good inside. I am a married kind that I do. Forever searching for someone new. Thank you. So that song's called Because I Do.
And no, it wasn't written that way. It was redacted for the duo show.
Yeah.
All the songs were written on bass. Most all the songs were written on bass,
Really?
which gave Billy some latitude, and we would have discussions about whether it was a major or minor chord, and I would have to point out where the melody was going, why it was minor instead of major.
I don't think I've ever heard anybody say a song is written on bass before.
Yeah, it's part of the genius that is. You know, that's just that's what I play. I mean, I
think
picked
people
up
write
guitar
songs
later.
on bass, don't they?
Please ask Sting when you see him next.
I've been trying to get him in here, so we'll see.
Yeah,
I'm gonna save
see
that
how that
question for
works. See, talk to his people.
him. Let's talk about a couple other albums. I'm a huge fan of Under the Big Black Sun. I think it's an amazing record. I think the album cover, the artwork is incredible. I wonder, amongst the work you've done, where does that stack up for you in all of your, amongst your work?
I don't think of them as separate records. In fact, if you gave me a test and said, okay, match all these songs, what record they're on, up until a couple years ago, we did album shows where we played each album all through its entirety, like every night. And then I kind of got, okay, so that record has those songs. But I'm back to now, it's like, I don't know. I just think of them as songs because we play them live. So they didn't end there. It wasn't like, I made this record 35 years ago and there it sits. Just like that. It's like, that's just like a small part of those songs' history is that they're on a record together. So I don't even know. But I do like that record. I remember that, the ones that are on there I like. That's probably our more serious record, right? And more.
Yeah, it's pretty dark, but it's a great title. We kept using that title.
Yeah.
That's when we did the book. I wanted to call it The Have-Nots, and they said, "Oh, the publisher," because publishers are surprisingly similar to record companies.
That's to see far ahead down the line of all the pitfalls that
they
are.
don't really get it half the time. But they said, "Oh, I don't know. We're gonna have to take that to committee." And the committee came back and said, "Oh, I don't think that's gonna work. It might end up in the economics section." It's like, are you fucking kidding me?
Nothing from that punk scene is ever going to end up in the economics
Exactly.
section.
But Yeah, and I'm particularly fond of the artwork, which you're so kind to have given us. This guy gave us the original scratch board that my friend Alfred Harris from Seattle, he gave it to us today. It kind of choked me up.
We hadn't seen it since the day we handed it over to Electra, and here it is.
Yeah,
Isn't that
it's
crazy?
pretty
Thank
great.
you very much. That was really nice of you.
Yes.
I'm just
So-
the keeper. Does not belong to me. It belongs to
I
you.
want all my other stuff back now, too.
Garrett, work
All
on
my
that.
journals, jewelry, everything else that got stolen along
All
the way.
that stuff that I lost in a bar.
Yeah.
Is there anything off of that album you'd like to do?
We just did.
Oh, that's right.
That-
Because I do.
That one is on that record.
That is.
All right. Hungry Wolf is on there. Blue Spark
yes.
is on there.
Which is like to add on to what Exene was saying. Blue Spark was written before we recorded Los Angeles, but it didn't really fit on those records, on L.A. or on Wild Gift. It was like, no, I don't know. We'll get around to that. We would play it live, and so then, I mean, we were writing and recording and touring at a pretty furious pace because we put out 4 records in 4 years. But we were young, and there was all kinds of things to discover lyrically and music and stuff, and because we did have a pretty deep history of or knowledge of music. But yeah, so we were maybe a song short, and so, oh, let's try that Blue Spark song. Let's bring out that old chestnut and put it on this new record. What do
But I
you
wonder
say?
about that. You're recording at that point in somewhat of a furious pace. You think about these bands in the '60s, how quickly the records were coming out, how quickly they're going. Bands now take,
Yeah.
many years between releases. I mean, you were
Yes.
like year after year after year. So many of those songs, I would
Yeah.
imagine, had been around for a bit. I mean,
A little bit. I mean, especially Wild Gift. There were new songs written, but then other ones that didn't, like We're Desperate and Adult Books were previously released on Danger House and stuff like that. But I mean, I know when you look at other people, we were talking about this singer Kay Starr earlier a couple days ago, and I looked up her releases, and she released like 3 records in a year.
Like 1952 or something, 57.
Yeah, late 50s.
But
early
George
60s.
Jones, they all used to do that. You know, you look at how many records
Rolling
people...
Stones and Beatles were putting out 2 records a year, and it's
Yeah.
like, damn. Wish
Yeah.
I could do that.
yeah, 1965. I think the Beatles maybe got 3 out, something like
Yeah.
that.
Well, and also,
Ridiculous.
but the singers like K-Star, that they had songwriters, and
Right.
they had musicians, and they could just go in the
And they
studio
had,
and
yeah, and they
great-
had real A&R people
Yeah.
that would say,
Albums were shorter too.
Yeah. That's true.
thank God.
And not to mention Christmas records and everything else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
So 1983, More Fun in the New World. Another personal favorite. I got my start in college radio when that record came out. So it was also, the Reagan years. So you mentioned The New World. Also very fond of I Must Not Think Bad Thoughts. I think that's an incredible song.
We're finally doing that live. We never did that live
Really?
before.
Yeah.
Yeah. Once, like Exene was saying, once we started doing the album shows, we had to figure out how to do that, and we added another player. Actually, the guy's playing with us now is Craig Peckham. He's from here. And
He's a drummer with Deke Dickerson. You might have seen him. He's a great guy. He
Right.
plays drums and guitar with us now so that we can...
yeah, so DJ
Switch.
plays vibes on that, and Billy plays a little sax at the end, and it's a song people like to hear now. I must
love
not think bad thoughts is a good thing, but that's kind of harder to do on.
Yeah.
Should we try that, or should
Well,
we just do?
No.
I
Or
would
we could do
love-
New World.
I was going to get back around to it. I just, for me, being in college radio, I just loved the way it was sort of like it was a name check for, for what was
Yes.
All
going
those
on,
bands,
all
yeah.
the other bands. I just,
Yeah.
we all were kind of like proud to play that,
Well, at the time, I mean, at the time there weren't a lot of outlets, and college radio came in kind of at the perfect point. It was maybe 81, 82. It really started gaining some power, and then that's kind of what broke all the Seattle bands, because it was really well established, and then they started getting wooed by the record companies, and then it all kind of, now it's probably back to the same thing.
Everything's all over the place now.
Yeah.
But the reason I said that with the Last American Band to get played on the radio is because here were all these great bands all over the country, Texas, Minnesota, wherever, all over the country, great bands. And the only thing on the radio was Depeche Mode and Duran Duran. And English bands, like in LA, they would have English bands all day long, and then for an hour they'd have like, Rodney would be on, now they have
Yeah,
the
Rodney do the
flashback
show.
lunch or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'd hear like, I heard you guys on the radio today, they played White Girl on the radio today. It's like, wow, that's great. And then people would think, you know, K-Rock is playing like bands, you know, like, but they didn't play the local bands.
Yeah.
They didn't support the local scene. They only played the English bands. And so that's why that was annoying.
Also at a point where they had these consulting firms that would consult from Arizona, and they'd be programming a station in Detroit. And it's like, you have no idea what's going on in Detroit. And so at the time, you know, they didn't play the New World, which has Don't Forget the Motor City. They didn't play that in Detroit, which is insane. I mean, that could be a whole rallying call, and that was the point at which people first started realizing, wait a minute, maybe we should keep some of this manufacturing, which is astounding that now it's a new political football, but that's a whole other discussion. I don't want to stay away from that, but yeah, that was one of the fighting the good fight. We fought the good fight for our people and for the, you know, but it was too hard to overcome. The system was in place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the New World. Talk about a song that is still, to this day, I believe, relevant. It was relevant at the time, it's relevant now. Any chance you can take a
We can do
run at that one?
We can do that.
All right.
I think people lose track of this is one of the songs that Exene wrote kind of top to bottom. And I just said, oh, I can just repeat that. This was supposed to be the New World part for the chorus. Perfect. And people lose track of the fact that the introduction, the first verse, is told from a bum's point of view. Or not maybe a bum, hobo, but maybe someone who's like, goes to the bar at 6 a.m. in the morning, because there are bars that open at 6 a.m. And he's like, what the hell? What's going on? My place is closed. Why is this happening?
I think that I was living in another time, because I don't think bars close on election day anymore, do they? Did they back then in 1981?
No.
So I was just, you know, it was like It's a Wonderful Life with Jimmy Stewart or something. I said,
You were thinking about Tammany Hall.
yeah, Tammany Hall, exactly. Teapot Dome scandal, you know.
Honest to goodness, the bars weren't open this morning. They must have been voting for a new president or something.
Do you have a quarter? I said, yep.
Honest to goodness, the tears have been falling all over this country's face. It was better before they voted for what's his name. This is supposed to be the new world. Better before they voted for what's his name. This is supposed to be the new world. Ford Automobile, Alabama, windshield wipers, Buffalo, New York, Gary, Indiana, don't forget the Motor City, Baltimore, D.C. Now all we need is don't forget the Motor City. This is supposed to be the new world. Don't forget the Motor City. This is supposed to be the new world. All we need is money. Give us what you can spare. 20 or 30 pounds of potatoes or 20 or 30 beers. A turkey on Thanksgiving like alms for the poor. All we need are the necessities and more. Better before they voted for what's his name. This is supposed to be the new world. Better before they voted for what's his name. This is supposed to be the new world.
That was awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sure.
All right, I want to move along to this is an interesting record for me. See How We Are. There's some changes at the time with the band. I know you were working with Dave Alvin was involved.
Yeah,
Fourth-
Billy decided to stop playing music for a while, and then we decided to keep going with Dave Alvin, our friend from the Blasters, who's great. And we were getting kind of into the rootsy kind of stuff more anyway. We had the Knitters by then, which was our band started in '82, which was, you know, total old-timey music. And then Tony Gilkison was in there for a while, but yeah, there's some good songs. That was a hard time, though. It was not as good as with Billy. Not that there's anything wrong with those guys. It just wasn't the same. But yeah, it's some good songs. See How We Are is a good song.
There are two songs in the record that I think really people love. One of the questions submitted was about 4th of July, which I think Dave wrote. Right?
Yeah.
And so, odd question. I'm going to throw it out there. Have you ever or have you often performed 4th of July on the 4th of July?
I have, yes.
Well, Billy didn't write it, and he doesn't plan it, so we never do it next. But
Right. Yeah.
we did the Knitters.
Yeah. I have a policy that I will do it from Memorial Day to Labor Day. I treat it like white pants and white shoes. The
Like a
ladies know what I'm
Christmas.
talking
It's a
about.
seasonal song. It's a seasonal
Yeah.
thing.
However, Dave, I believe, plays it year-round,
Yeah.
which he can.
Sure.
And it really pisses him off that everyone says, "Oh, you're playing that Robert Earl Keen song." He's going like,
Why
'Cause
did he record it or something?
he'd recorded it and had kind of a hit because he's, you know.
Well, there's worse things.
It's like,
Mailbox money is not
Yeah.
bad.
Not a bad thing. Can we talk about See How We Are? It's love. You talk about that album being a rootsy record, a little more, maybe less punk rock sounding, perhaps. But I think that song is incredible. First time I heard it, felt like a punch to the gut, and it's so good. And the way the two of you sing it together.
A little overproduced, but that was, you know, what was going on then. Took a long time to write. I didn't rush it. I wrote kind of most of that, but I would write a verse and then start writing another verse and then realize that that wasn't very good, and then I'd just stop and I would let it sit for a while. I did write the bridge to that, like, in the studio. We did a demo of it with this producer who we didn't like, didn't end up working with. But he said, maybe this needs a bridge. I said, okay. And I happened to have a book of stuff I'd written and just looked in the book and thought, how about that? And then just reversed the chord change, the chord progression. Boom.
I thought you were going to say you had a book of bridges handy.
Let's
Let's see. A,
Let's
B,
see.
C.
A, B, C, Brooklyn. No, not Brooklyn Bridge.
Have you ever noticed how you are familiar with some Pearl Jam songs, right? You're familiar with some songs by Pearl Jam, right?
I know the songs. I don't know them by the titles because I never really had any records.
There is a song that Eddie wrote called "Elderly Woman Behind the Counter in a Small Town," mostly acoustic. And
Yes.
it's stunning to me now that I realize that the chords are very, very similar. You can tell he's a fan. I mean, it's a different.
Yeah.
They're played differently, but
Yeah.
you could almost do like a medley of the two songs, and I bet
Yeah.
he probably has.
Yeah. Ed has been very kind to us, and so has Pearl Jam. We toured with them a good bit, and he covered us a song of mine and talk about mailbox money. That was nice. But yeah, the funny thing about See How We Are, the record, is that it is more rootsy, and there are some people that discovered us on that record because we, our saturation or whatever, our profile had gotten larger. And then they went backward, and they were like, oh, I get it. This is the way. But we were constantly evolving, and, like Exene was saying, it had been influenced by a bunch of rootsy bands and so forth. And some of the people that it'd be surprising, like people that are songwriters and things like that, were really attracted to that record more because it was like a little more open and, Americana-ish.
So, can I talk you into doing that one?
Could we do like a verse and a chorus?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
No, we might as well do the whole thing.
Oh, God. Well, you know, because we're also doing a thing with our fans on these shows where we meet people in the early evening and we play some songs and a sound check at the venue, and then they get a bunch of cool stuff. So we're actually playing 8 shows.
Yes. 4 really short shows, and so we'll make 9. Well, this will be 9.
This will be nice. So it's not that we don't want to, it's just, you know, it's high notes and stuff, middle of the day.
There are men lost in jail, crowded 52 room. There's too many rats in this cage of a world. And the women know their place. They sit home and write letters. Then they visit once a year, when they both just sit there and stare. See how we are. Gotta keep bars in between us. See how we are. We only sing about it once in every 20 years. See how we are. Oh, see how we are. There are 7 kinds of Coke, 500 kinds of cigarettes. There's freedom of choice in the USA, drives everybody crazy. Down in South Dakota, well, they don't give a damn about people standing on a rock or something. See how we are. Get out of my way, Injun. See how we are. We only sing about it once in every 20 years. See how we are. Oh, see how we are. Well, this morning the alarm rang at noon, and I'm trying to write this letter to you about how much I care. Why I just can't be there. Draw your bath and comb your hair. Last night in a night spot where things ain't so hot, my friend met a boy. He said, I'm in love. I said, oh, really? And what's this one's name? She said his first name was Homeboy. I said, could his last name be Trouble? See how we are. Homeboy, isn't that one of those south of the border names? See how we are. We only sing about it once in every 20 years. See how we are. Oh, see how we are. Now that highway is coming through, so we all gotta move. This bottom rung ain't no fun at all, 'cause now fires and rock houses and grape flavored rat poison are the new trinity for this so-called community. See how we are. Gotta keep bars at all of our windows. See how we are. We only sing about it once in every 20 years. See how we are. Oh, see how we are. See how we are. Oh, see how we are.
Thank you.
Garrett's getting choked up.
Wow.
His record station dreams are coming true.
That
Job. Job done. What is it?
Yes.
What did Bush say? Mission accomplished.
Yeah.
Choked up Garrett.
Wow.
He's a real man.
Guys, thank you so much. That was
you're welcome.
absolutely wonderful. What an honor and a privilege to have you here today. Thanks again.
And good luck with your radio station here. It's good that you're doing something and people support it, and it should do some good things for your town and the world. So
Thank
yay
you.
for that.
Thank you so much. That's it, guys. We're so happy you were able to take the time to do this, and it is our pleasure.
Glad everybody came down.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Maybe we'll
Appreciate
see
it.
you at the Casbah.